Everybody, I'm Michael Coker. I am the mayor of the city of Mulberry, and today we have Jamie Palmer here, who is the city manager. And this is an episode that you need to watch because it's going to be a frequently asked questions interview with Jamie where you can get all the answers to everything you need to know about the city. So stay tuned. All right, everyone, we got Jamie Palmer here, who is the man in the city of Mulberry. He is the city manager, so he's in charge of all the city's operations, everything that's been going on. And so we compiled some of the most frequently asked questions that you, the residents, and the public have. And so this is Jamie's opportunity to address those questions, and hopefully you'll leave this episode with much more information than where we started. So Jamie, first off, I know we've done this before. Just who are you? Kind of talk a little bit about your role.
Yeah, so again, my name is Jamie Palmer. I'm the city manager, and I oversee kind of all the departments inside the city of Mulberry. So all of the directors or department heads report to me, and I've been within local government for about 10 years now. I've been with the city of Mulberry since pretty much inception, and from Rome, Georgia originally, but this has become my new home out in this way. So
sounds great. All right, well, let's go ahead and jump in. So the first most frequently asked question that I get, obviously it's renewal season, right? For alcohol license, business licenses, pour permits. I know the city gets a lot of calls because there was been this transition from Gwinnett County now to the city of Mulberry. So first off, can you maybe address some of the most common maybe calls that you get about licensing?
So I think the first one that I want to address is related to business licenses. We adopted Gwinnett County's original code. And that was how we kind of started the process of renewals, new licenses. And then there was a little bit of a mix up when we first took this on because of the fact that we recognized everybody's existing permits inside of Gwinnett County. And then we took them in as renewals instead of new applications. So the first thing I will say is that we tried to be a little bit more innovative than we should have been, in that we sent out emails via renewal, right? And if you're like me, you try to get to as many emails as you can, but sometimes they hit spam, they do all these other kind of things. And so we saw in about middle of February, year to date at that point, we're about 50% less than we were with renewals. Mm-hmm. So that's when we said, okay, sometimes just, normal processes are the best way to do it. So we went back snail mail. And we sent out renewals, and so that spooked a lot of people because they felt like they didn't get the first notice. And we said, no, well, it's sent via email, so we extended that time frame. So if you received that your application was due at a certain time frame, we extended that through May without any late penalties or anything of that nature. And we're going to go back to doing the snail mail first. I think the next part, and some of the questions that we get, is when it comes to pour permits. There was originally in the code where it said that alcohol permits and pour permits were done, on an annual basis. And Gwinnett County, everybody was used to doing that every 2 years. We're going to look at doing that after this renewal season's over and make those code modifications. That way we can kind of be a little bit more in line with what everyone's used to and reduce some of the, burden, that red tape can have sometimes, which is our main objective.
Okay. So on the subject of licenses, so if you're somebody who maybe had traditionally paid your business license to Gwinnett County, year after year after year, and obviously now it's with Mulberry, I know that this is happening. It seems to be less and less. It was much more last year, but if you've already paid Gwinnett County, but you realized, oh no, I'm in Mulberry, is there any remedies, or what should a person do in that situation?
So we don't have much of that anymore because now all the businesses know that they need to come to Mulberry.
Right. Okay.
And so that's been a good thing, right? So the difference in between, everybody was confused about if they needed to pay Gwinnett County. We are now, everybody pretty much knows they need to come to us. We are also looking at our fees. One thing that we've noticed too is that based upon the code, right, we need to modify our fees a little bit just because the fact that we're seeing these fees come in and we're like, this is a little bit different. Now, I can't change anything about renewals for this year because that's just what the fees are set at. Right? We have to bring this before mayor and council and change them, get those things adjusted. But again, these are what we adopted directly from Gwinnett County. And we want to be a little bit more aligned with our neighbors who have similar mindsets or similar makeups. Like City of Peachtree Corners, Sandy Springs, Chamblee, Dunwoody. So we're gonna adjust our fees a little bit.
Okay. And then you talked about the pour permit, right? So if let's say I'm a new bartender, a new server and I want to serve alcohol and I need a pour permit. Can you just walk us through the process of that? Is there a fingerprinting requirement? Is there, certain steps that need to be taken? So if there's somebody who's watching who's like, yeah, I'm turning 18, just got my first job at a restaurant. What do I need to do? Can you walk them through that process?
Yeah. So for anybody who gets a pouring permit, right, there's the first step of filling out the application and doing a background check. We were closed off from Gwinnett County. Gwinnett County refused to do our background checks for our per permits. And we were thankful that the city of Lawrenceville came in to kind of help us. And they, started doing the background checks. Well, we noticed that there was a little bit of snafu there. And so we said, you know what, we're going to take on that responsibility. We have post-certified marshals who are there. And that process has multiple steps. And I don't want to get into the layers of government that have required the steps that we have to take. But basically, it boils down to we have to have 2 GBI licenses. One for the city itself and one for our post-certified marshal's office. Now, our post-certified marshal's office have gotten their stuff done, which is how we got the fingerprint scanner, and we are completing the stuff on the city side. So till then, though, all the background checks need to go through another party in order for us to finish those applications. Now, the next thing that we're running into, which is we're going to have an address, we are very thankful that we have the ability to work on such a lean staff. For those of you who don't know, there are only about 13 city employees. Then we have our contractors that we work with for a total makeup of about 50 people. Now, your average government of our size with 40,000 people across our square mileage has about 100 to 150 employees, right? So I'm very proud of my staff in the fact that they're able to accomplish all of this. But what that does do is it creates a backlog sometimes. So we're working through how to lean our process a little bit, whether it be fees, whether it be application process, the timing of renewals, the timing of when you have to get, a pouring license, whether it be 1 year versus 2 years, and then what it means to have your license renewed. You have to do certain things once a year or every 2 years, those kind of things. So we're diving deeply into our code to address those situations. But I say all that to say this, right? Over the next 30 days or so, we feel that you all, as the public, are going to see a lot of changes because this is our first renewal season, our true renewal season.
Okay.
Last year, again, we accepted all these applications from Gwinnett County, so we put full faith in Gwinnett County doing everything that they needed to do. But we now have to do the reporting to the state for all alcohol licenses, E-Verify, and we just want to make sure that when we do that this year, all the boxes were checked.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, that's very helpful on the licensing. Let's go ahead and move on to kind of our next topic that's our next frequently asked question, and that's along the lines of zoning, right? I think that there's a lot of people who still don't understand kind of the zoning process, what happens, kind of how it moves through the process. So can you just give us just a general 30,000-foot view from the application to the rezoning being granted? Just walk us through that process, if you don't mind.
So here are the couple things that I think that are I'll just start from the beginning, right? And then I'll highlight the things that I think are great about our zoning process that you don't see in other places. For starters, I will say that first it starts off with a application meeting. So there's a set schedule that everybody can find online of when application deadlines are. And before anybody comes in, they have to have what we call a required pre-application meeting. This is where my staff sits down with them. They go through the application. They check and make sure that everything's within the application packet. And I do want to highlight that staff is agnostic, right? We look at what the code is. We look at, the blend of what mayor and council have approved versus what was already in Gwinnett County's code that we adopted that we need to rip out later. And then we say, okay, this is what the code says. So there's no preference on our end of what an application is versus what it's not. We just present the information. So after the pre-application meeting, then they are scheduled to go before Planning Commission. Now, Planning Commission before they send that, they're supposed to send out notice. We schedule them for Planning Commission. They send out a notice, and
Which, let me stop you there. So that notice is, because I actually got one of these recently at my house, right? Is that's a letter that goes to all the property owners within
a 2,500-foot radius.
Okay, got it. So that they have noticed that this might be this. There's been an application filed.
That's correct.
Okay.
And so I think this is probably one of the greatest things that Mulberry has, because the fact that when you look at the requirement, now, though this is a little bit burdensome on the applicant, when you look at that requirement, there is not another place in the state of Georgia that I have found that has a requirement so high to notify the public of its activity. Most places have, a 500-foot radius, or if they do 250 foot radius, then there's a parcel depth requirement, 750 feet, right? We do 2,500 feet. This is the largest amount that you can see to notify the public that there is something going on that can immediately affect them. And I think that's great. The next part of the process is, once they notify the public, they have to advertise that in the newspaper, or we advertise that for them that this case is going to happen. Then they come before Planning Commission, and then that's the first time that their case is heard. Now, Planning Commission is just a recommending body. Nothing that Planning Commission approves or denies actually changes it. They can just add conditions as another recommending body to mayor and council. Then it goes before mayor and council. Now, another thing that I think is great is that we do a 2-read before a vote at mayor and council. A lot of places will have the first read at Planning Commission, and then they will have their read before mayor and council, and the zoning decision is made. We have it to where Planning Commission gives a public hearing, allows for recommendation from them as well as additional conditions, and then they go before mayor and council. And then the public hears it at mayor and council the first time, and then they can have another input at the second meeting before mayor and council vote. So all in all, right, the public gets 3 opportunities to where they can make their voice heard before mayor and council make a decision. And then we have a larger radius as to who gets the notification that that zoning action or some zoning action is going to happen within our community.
Yeah. So just in summation, so Mulberry has a wider notice radius, so more people find out about the rezoning or get notice of it. And then, unlike in other cities where they maybe only have 2 opportunities, the public has 3 opportunities to speak, or at least to give a hearing, or at least speak with your council member prior to the vote. So I think that's awesome. And I think that's a huge thing that the public needs to know, is that, there is a much greater opportunity in Mulberry to be able to put your thumbprint or your fingerprint on what you want your immediate community to look like. So I think that's awesome.
Absolutely. I think one thing that also needs to be noted, since we're talking about zoning, is the fact of there were close to, when we did the count, 2,600 units across multiple developments that Gwinnett County approved between 2023 and as late as December 30th of 2024. So a lot of the activity that people are seeing out there right now were already approved by Gwinnett County. And when you start looking at what the difference between vested rights are what are entitled by property. They don't go with a developer. They go with the property itself, and they stay with the property. And so once the governing body approves those conditions on a particular piece of property, it no longer matters who owns that property until, either there's some form of rezoning that's done. And if that individual who owns it wants to develop it based upon those entitlements, there's almost nothing that we can do.
Yeah, I would say that's a comment I see a lot on social media, right? Is, well, Mulberry's just approving neighborhoods here and there, and basically, it's my understanding Mulberry has not rezoned a neighborhood to date. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, so these neighborhoods that you're seeing, those were all entitlements, is the legal term, as Jamie said, that were granted to these landowners by Gwinnett County prior to Mulberry's creation. And I think that's great for people to know, just to understand, when you look at these large developments that are clearing now, breaking ground, things are happening. These were all things, the majority of them, if not all of them, were done before the city was even founded.
Yeah, most of the things that, my staff has actually approved through just the normal process have just been detached single family homes on, if not an acre close to it. And people keep seeing those go up left and right. But the larger subdivisions are things that we've been working through with transfer permits from Gwinnett where they already had a vested right.
Yeah, sure. That's great. That's great information. All right, let's go to our third and final topic, which is the marshal's office, okay? One of the questions that I get all the time is, why do we need a marshal's office? What benefit does that serve the city? How is it paid for? Where did you guys get these vehicles? Can you just kind of maybe touch on the marshal's office?
Yeah, absolutely. So I spent a long time working for the city of Woodstock. And during my tenure there, built some great relationships, and they donated 5 vehicles to us. So the marshal's vehicles that you all see were vehicles that were donated to us from the city of Woodstock at no cost to us. Myself and a couple other members of my staff drove up there and then drove the vehicles back. And then we put a little bit of funding into it to go ahead and get them wrapped here locally. All a marshal is a post-certified code enforcement officer. When we took on code enforcement, we realized that there are certain things that we were dealing with that traditional community code enforcement agents need the ability to detain individuals in certain cases, have body cameras because of certain incidences that we were running into. And so we needed to have a force that legally could carry a weapon if necessary, just for their own protection and for the protection of others. And so that's why we decided to go more towards the post-certified route. Our marshals have been working very closely with Gwinnett County Police and all the other agencies surrounding us like Auburn, and Brazelton, just to make sure that we can assist them if there was anything that was needed. And so we currently have 6 officers. We have 3 that are post-certified and we have 3 that aren't. One is Jenny. She is not post-certified, but she's our TAC agent. She handles all of our requirements inside that office. Our chief is post-certified and both of our sergeants are post-certified.
And what is post-certification, just for those that may not know?
This is it's a peace officer. And these are requirements that they have to go through in order to be able to legally carry a weapon, arrest and detain individuals, and things of that nature. So these are individuals we have one who came from Gwinnett County PD, who also used to work for the sheriff's office. We have one who came from Sugar Hill, who also has a law enforcement background. Then we have one who's a retired chief from Kingsland and the city of Woodstock. And so we have probably about 150 or plus years of law enforcement experience inside of our office. And then we also have 2 code enforcement officers who actually came from Gwinnett County. One of them was the code enforcement agent for our area over in Mulberry when this area was in unincorporated Gwinnett. And so I feel that we have built, myself and my other management team have built a great staff of individuals from across the county who have experience inside of Gwinnett, who can kind of bring that experience in our marshal's office to bring a high level of code enforcement.
Yeah, I agree totally. And I will say this, I'll add, obviously, many of the cities that don't have police departments in Gwinnett County have marshal's office, right? You have Sugar Hill, Peachtree Corners, Decula has a marshal. And so this does seem to be something that most cities do if they're one of the cities in Gwinnett that doesn't have a police department.
Yeah, and usually what ends up happening is if you have a police department, then you have a community code enforcement agent, right? Which is the balance. You either have a post-certified marshal's office who handles your code enforcement and a higher level of activity if necessary, or you have both. And so this is a good merger to kind of where we're saying we're not going full police, but if it's necessary and needed, we have someone who can react very quickly and give Gwinnett County assistance if necessary.
So now the big question, right, that I see all the time is how is this getting paid for? Am I, as a resident of Mulberry, going to have to pay more money now that we have a marshal's office?
No. So again, this goes back to how we fund things, right? The city of Mulberry is very fortunate to where our insurance premiums balance out most of our departments, and then revenue takes care of itself. So our court system itself is supported by citations that are done, but that doesn't feed the entire thing. Our marshal's office, as well as our court, municipal court, are all taken care of by our insurance premiums.
And then the other, that's a great, I mean, obviously the fiscal responsibility that you and others have shown to the city is phenomenal. So thank you for that. And then the last kind of comment that I see all the time is this marshal's office just a new glorified HOA? Are they going to be out there with a tape measure measuring the height of my grass and just issuing fine after fine after fine? Can you talk a little bit about maybe your philosophy with the marshal's office?
Yeah, no, our goal, not just with the marshal's office, but in court too, because they commingle, right? Like we issue citations, then you come to court for us. Our goal is not to make people pay fines. Our goal is to improve the community. And if someone, and there's been multiple cases, we've had probably about, I want to say 40 or 50 cases since we opened up court, right? Through those, most of those were situations where we have mitigated it before someone had to come to court, and we make them report to court just to show that the situation has been resolved. And so that's our goal. Our goal is if there's some activity that's going on of any kind, we want our marshals to go out there and be community peace officers and show everyone that, this is why we do this. There's a little notice that we give that say, you have a certain time frame before we issue a citation. And usually it's only those who kind of want to buck the system a little bit, right, who end up having to come to court. But then they see the severity of it sometimes and they go, well, I don't want to take time out of my day to come to court at the end of the day, right? Like I might as well just resolve the situation as fast as possible. So
yeah, and I appreciate that. It seems like both in the court system and with the marshal's office, it seems more about the goal is keeping the city looking beautiful, right? It's not about raising revenues through fines, and I think that's a very important point I think people should know for sure.
And then sometimes you'll see it like we work great with Gwinnett County Department of Transportation. So when they're out cutting the grass and doing maintenance along the right of way, people notice that, during the summertime signs are less frequent, right? But that's because I have 3 code enforcement officers who are out on the road every day, and they have maintenance crews who are coming in during the summertime. And so they have been assisting us during the summertime with removing those signs. And then it's just 3 people doing the same work of their entire crews during the wintertime. So if you see more signs in the wintertime, it's not that, code enforcement has been lacking. It's just that, we have other help that does it during the summer.
Yeah. All right. Well, I got one bonus final question. Are you ready?
Ready for it.
It's going to be a lightning round. One final question is, can you talk about the people who, obviously we see a lot of complaints about traffic on 124, 324. Can you talk about whose responsibility those state highways fall on? Is that the city? Is that the county? Is that the state? Just talk a little bit about that.
So state highways fall on the responsibility of the state. That has been our big discussion point as of late, is we've been working with our local legislators who have put a little bit of pressure on the Georgia Department of Transportation, and GDOT has actually come to the table to kind of help look at resolving some of these issues along state routes. We own the right of way, but right now, through the transition period, all of the roads are the responsibility of Gwinnett County. And so when it comes to doing some transportation improvements, like at Hamilton Mill Parkway, that we've worked with Gwinnett County and the state on because it intersects at 124, or if it comes where the improvements at Bailey Road or 324, or Flowery Branch and Ducking Creek, we are now working on improving those, and those are just some of the projects that the mayor, the majority leader, and Senator Dixon have all kind of sat down and said, hey, let's find a way to work through all of this with our other partners.
Yeah, I agree. And the state's been fantastic at kind of listening to our concerns and saying, hey, what can we do? Obviously, that's one of the most frustrating things I think for me as a mayor is I think not being able to do more on those state highways. I sit in 124 traffic across Mill Creek just like everybody else, and I would love nothing more than to fix that. But unfortunately, like I said, that is just the jurisdiction on that lies with the state. But we are working on that, and that is something we're hoping to fix.
And I will say Majority Leader Chuck F. Strachan as well as Senator Clint Dixon have, again, been able to help with us get meetings with, the Department of Transportation and telling us the proper steps that need to be taken in order to start working on these improvements. And so it's been a major help to have the state step in and work with such a brand new city like us and a new mayor and council on resolving a lot of these issues.
Yeah, I agree. They've been fantastic. So, all right, Jamie, is there anything else that you want to touch on? Any other frequently asked question, or we hit everything for you?
I just want to say that it's been an absolute joy to be inside this community and run a brand new city and put all these elements together. I would say, just be patient with our staff. We're working through resolving, making sure that the code works. We have responsibilities to mayor and council that mean that we have to follow the code as is. And then as we make these changes, we will make it easier on the public. So just bear with us.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate all you're doing. I appreciate all your staff is doing. Everybody's working so hard, and they've done a phenomenal job to this point. So thank you, Jamie. To everybody out there, this was an awesome episode. A lot of information. If you like getting these updates, obviously like and subscribe to this podcast, and we'll continue to keep them coming out. But until next time, have a great day here in the city of Mulberry.